One of my favorite keyboards for gaming and just conventional work and typing is the Kinesis split keyboard. But recently they released a 60% ultra compact keyboard just for gaming, the Tournament TKO Kinesis keyboard. Compact keyboards are nice because they can prevent that left internally rotated position of the shoulder, preventing that tilt, and give you a little more space on the right so you can hit those headshots when you flick. So today we're going to be reviewing this keyboard so you can make sure it is the right keyboard for you before you make that purchase.
Hey, this is Dr. Ho and Doctor Who, and this video is an in-depth review of the Kinesis Gaming TKO keyboard.
Exactly, and we're going to review everything from the health professional perspective, including the general experience, the aesthetics, the build quality, its comfort of use, and of course, as physical therapists, its ergonomic adjustability. And lastly, we need to know if it's affordable for us as gamers. Right? But before we get into all of that, as your friendly neighborhood physical therapist, we want to remind you that ergonomics is just one part of the picture. In fact, we think it's only 10% because we have to consider everything else, your lifestyle, your schedule, your conditioning, your fitness, if you take breaks, all of those, and see how they influence the physical stress on your wrist and your hand. But if you do have those things sorted, then absolutely ergonomics is the next step that we look at. All right, so let's get into it. After using it for a while, what do you feel like your experience has been, and how do you feel like the aesthetics are for the TKO gaming keyboard?
Yeah, so as you may have seen on this channel, my unboxing video, you can see that it has high quality packaging, and the keyboard is shipped included inside the hard shell case, so it's guaranteed to be delivered safely. So you can, as you can see, I pulled it straight out of the box, didn't have to fiddle with anything, you plugged it in and you could use it, but it also comes up with instructions and tools to customize it further. So aesthetic wise, as you can see, I really love this kind of black gray theme and this subtle edge lighting on the side of the keyboard. Also like how the secondary features, it's angular, right? You can't even see it. It's hard to see. It's actually hidden on the side here. So that unlike other keyboards where it's on the top, it doesn't actually affect its appearance much at all, but you then still know what you're pressing. You can also see that this black gray look this is currently the wave pattern, but it also has a few different colors and customizable patterns that you can use it with to suit almost any setup.
Yeah, I do like it for a darker aesthetic setup. I think it definitely would accent it pretty nicely. What do you think about the build quality, though?
Yeah, so as you can see, I'm actually really comfortable just holding it. I don't feel like I'm going to drop it and break it. It's got an aluminium frame and the key caps are PBT. So, yep, they're designed to last for lots of years and for lots of gaming. I've been using it for gaming for the last 5 months and it still feels like, it looks like, it's brand new. I've also been moving the keyboard around the desk because I've also used a full stock standard keyboard for work. And the braided cable, as you can see, has not shown anywhere at all. The only thing I could possibly fault, and this is a demo copy by the way, is some of the letters, and I don't think will be able to see it in the video, but if you use like a magnifying glass, maybe you can see that it's a little bit hard to see some areas being translucent, but like you might not be able to see the video. It's actually very hard. And that said, with the 60-day guarantee and 1-year warranty, you can just get replacement key caps. And I didn't bother because it's not really a problem for me.
Got it. So it sounds like you're pretty satisfied with the keyboard so far, 5 months in, and you've done some gaming. So with that in mind, how would you rate the overall experience, the aesthetics, and the build quality of the TKO?
Yeah. So I'll rate it really highly. I'm giving it a 9.5 out of 10. The only reason being is that even though it will suit most setups, there might be some people's setups at home with certain colors that they might not quite like the appearance or it doesn't quite suit. But it clearly, as you can see, has superb build quality and features.
Got it. So you guys heard that? He gives it a 9.5 wrists out of 10. Not 10 wrists, but 9.5 wrists. So there you go. That's the build quality and the general experience on aesthetics. All right, so now we're going to get into the comfort of use, right? After using the TKO for 5 months now, how comfortable would you say that it is?
Yeah, so as I said earlier, this is the first mechanical keyboard I have extensively used. And my body did have to adjust to using the keys a bit because, as you can see, most mechanical keyboards are a bit taller, including with the keycaps, than your typical membrane keyboard that you might be using at school or for work. The thing about the keys is that they are the same distance apart, so I didn't have to get used to that. But as you can see in this keyboard, it doesn't have those dedicated numpad and like keys like delete and insert. So you might just need to get used to using the function key and pressing some of those buttons. It took me at most a couple of hours, and then I got completely accustomed to it. So yeah, it wasn't really an issue. The only thing, and this is what the website also states, is that obviously these keyboards aren't designed for if you're like writing a huge essay, or if you're a coder, or you're doing all this data analysis on like, I don't know, boring Excel sheets, because you usually would like a full keyboard for that. But this is a gaming keyboard. The benefits of that is to actually have this extra space, as we talk about, for your desk, so you can use your mouse more effectively.
Yeah, I think that's really important to consider because a lot of the times some people want to use it multi-purposely, right? They want to use it for gaming and for work. But most of the time with these shorter profile keyboards, it really isn't the best ergonomically, but also too just in general for long hours of coding and writing because you don't have that numpad. It might be easier for you to just utilize just a full stack keyboard. Um, so I know that you mentioned there's that triple space bar. What have you noticed so far using that and its ability to be maybe rebound?
Yeah, so having the extra buttons, and I'm going to stand up here, has been quite helpful. Because as you can see, you might be using WASD, and then you can actually use more buttons as I shift my thumb across like that. So I've played around with it. The very most simple thing is that usually I've been using V for some games like Overwatch, this button here, to use the voice. But when you do that, you can't actually hit that and still hit like going right easily. So the fact that I have it on the space bar allows me to actually do comms. I often play support, so I will be moving a lot while shot calling, and that has actually made it quite easy. The other things I could see it is for games that have a lot more binds, such as Fortnite. If you're building, then that flexibility to actually have your thumb doing some of these keys here to hit these ones, rather than your index finger working super hard on all these, that will probably help you both in terms of distributing your load, as in which finger does X amount of work, and also maybe some efficiency as well, because it's always easier to go like that with two fingers than try to bounce it around with just the one. So some
Exactly.
performance aspects there too.
But I did notice it doesn't have a palm rest. So is there an attachment for that?
Yeah, so there isn't a specific palm rest design for the TKO, but I don't think it's actually that necessary for gaming. So I've been using it for 5 months without a palm rest. But of course, some people out there, you might be used to one, or you might feel like you need it because you've been having some discomfort. So you can see, just like any mechanical keyboard, it's got that set amount of height that you can easily use any pre-existing one and just combine it together. If you're thinking about portability, so say you're taking this keyboard and you're going to tournaments, what's probably quite easy to pack, and sometimes I use to see if people will like using a wrist rest or not, is just getting a rolled up towel, and then you can even adjust how tall your wrist rest is, because you can adjust any layers of towels there. And yep, it could also serve you as, if you're getting sweaty hands from sweaty
Right.
gameplay,
Right.
to help you out there too with that towel.
I think the towel is a very elegant solution to rule in whether or not you will benefit from a palm rest if before you commit to buying it. It makes it really easy to help you identify whether you need it or not. So I also think it's important for everyone to consider, hey, your hand size is probably different than everyone else that's around you. So you want to take that into consideration. Some people have larger hands, more bulk at the forearm that might elevate their wrist. They have maybe more bulk at their actual hand that might make it so that their wrist is more neutral. So you have to kind of identify what works for you. What about with longer gaming sessions? Have you noticed anything with repeated use for like an hour or 2 hours during your streams? Anything that was notable with its use?
The only thing I sometimes notice is that my muscle memory for using the space bar for normal typing also just needs to be adjusted, because if you use the hyperspace space bar, and you can also just switch the profile of the keyboard to go, all the triple buttons are space, or you change the profile and left one is space and the other ones aren't. But say you're playing in the middle of a game and you decide to, I don't know, roast your teammates or something, or be nice to your teammates and say GG or congratulations. You might just need to get used to only using your left thumb to hit the space bar, because then you're going to hit the wrong keys if you're
Got it.
just used to using your right.
So with all of that in mind, right, we talked about the palm rest, we talked about the triple space bar, we also talked about just in general, what's the purpose and its comfort over these past 5 months. What would you rate it? What would you rate the TKO's comfort of use? How many wrists does this keyboard get?
Yeah, I'll give it 9 wrists out of 10. I think some would prefer kind of like a 75 keyboard where it has dedicated arrow keys and perhaps some of the functions like the lid and insert. So then you can potentially even use it for work as well if you don't need the numpad still. For me, I mean, I use it for my streaming and gaming computer. So it's been perfect. But I just know that I'm just thinking for all of you out there, it's not going to be perfect for everyone. So it gets close. It's a 9 out of 10.
All right, now we've gotten past comfort of use. We've gotten past the basic build quality. And as physical therapists, we have to talk about what you guys are most curious about, ergonomic adjustability. How's the TKO in this aspect? Both of us as PTs, as physical therapists, have made changes to our clients or patients in relation to their keyboard and mouse. So I wanted to know, with its adjustability and with what you've experienced, how does the TKO account for this?
Yeah, so the most obvious benefit that a 60% keyboard has over a 100% keyboard is obviously that 40% where there's more room for mouse movements. So both Matt and I, we've had clients, gamers who've had issues playing with their games. And when we assess them, we notice that it's often 3 patterns. Either their mouse is too far to the right, which has excessive shoulder abduction and external rotation. And that's because the keyboard numpad specifically is in the way, so they have to move their mouse further to the right. The other way people have been trying to adjust to this kind of same issue is they move the keyboard too far to the left. And when you do that, you often get what we call excessive wrist ulnar deviation. So the hand has to bend more towards the pinky side. And that obviously has some considerations for the wrist as well. The last one, as you might have seen, and this typically happens mostly in FPS games if you see them in tournaments, is they have their keyboard diagonal, but excessively diagonal. And when that happens, the wrist actually bends too far the other way towards the thumb side and actually turns the shoulder in. And all these different positions, they're not as optimal and can often be the reason why someone might have some issues to do with their arm when playing games.
Yeah, and with that last point, right, the keyboard having that slight angled or tilted position, while it does reduce ulnar deviation, that's something 60% keyboards can easily do because it doesn't take up as much of that mouse space to the right. So then, with that in mind, what is unique about it? Because there are other 60% keyboards out there. Anything that is specific to the TKO?
Yeah. So what I mentioned really brief at the start was that 0 degree slope. So most keyboards have kind of a bit of a taller angle. And let me just grab my generic keyboard and see if I can show that to you. So here's that generic keyboard. So you can see most of them have a little bit of a slope upwards. And what that does is if you put your hand there, your wrist needs to kind of extend a bit higher. And that wrist extension in a more extreme position can sometimes put extra load on some of your wrist tendons and muscles. So the fact that it's at zero can at least kind of give you a kind of a nice starting place, because you can always change it up to make it a bit more tilting with the legs on the back of the TKO keyboard. But if the keyboard already has that tilt, then there's no easy way to kind of go back to the other direction.
Right. I noticed that on the back of the keyboard when you're showing it, there's legs on both sides, right? That means you can negatively tilt it if you think about it, so that their fingers are a little lower than your wrist. Have you tried that at all, or have you tested that?
So if I was to do the legs here, just suspending it in the air, so you can't really tell, but if you imagine that the keyboard is kind of a bit like that, and your hands kind of not flat, but a little bit curved over. I've experimented with it. It's not as natural, because obviously I've been using the keyboards for many years, either at the zero or the normal slope. I can see some use of it in some people that might have irritations in their wrists, and we work out which muscle it is, of course, and know that this position is a bit better. But I don't find it's the natural position most people will be using. Definitely not for me.
Yeah, I don't know if I would ever use the negative tilt, and I would say it's probably hard pressed to find someone that really thrives in that position. Although you never know, everyone does have different morphology, different sizes of their forearm, wrist, hand, so it could benefit you, and it's just nice to have that adjustability. But I would say probably limited in its overall use.
So the second key thing that we might notice people using or doing when they're using their keyboard is what we call excessively pronate their forearm. So if we kind of you see my hand, if you rotate your hand more towards the thumb side. So with my left hand, it's more clockwise direction. So the idea here is that some keyboards, they kind of have it on a tilt left and right. And this is something that's quite unique to 60% one-piece keyboards, is that you can actually use these legs. And if I was to put it down, and I'll show it on your side, is that instead of being flat like this, it will have kind of an angle like this, which allows you to kind of not have to rotate your wrist as much as a standard keyboard would do. And again, this is something that has been quite helpful for some of our clients, where that has lengthened or affected the optimal position of some of the muscles that are causing them issues. So this is actually very handy compared to getting a random towel. We love using towels for keyboards, getting a random towel to raise one side of the keyboard upwards.
Yeah, what is interesting though is that there's only one that I've found relating to the wrist position and how it affects forearm endurance. And they show that when a wrist is closer to neutral, there's more forearm endurance, which we can somewhat take with a grain of salt, in that, hey, if you have this slight neutral position with the elevation of the inside of the keyboard, as Kev described, then you might be able to utilize your forearm muscles for an extended period of time. That still has to be proven in research, but it is something that we've noticed benefits a few of the clients that we've worked with. Although I would say most of the time we're looking at all the other factors, so it's hard to pin it at just the limiting the pronation.
Yeah. The thing to say about this is that it's very helpful if you know that you're playing a game and you're not going to do much typing at all, because it is weird if the keyboard's all to one side to then use the left hand will be fine, but the right hand would actually need to do a bit more
All
turning. So if
right.
you're doing a really short, like GGs, maybe I should just use a macro, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
When you're doing those little short sentences, it won't make an issue at all. But if you're going to start typing like long sentences or etc., you might find it a bit awkward, and you don't want to really switch the legs halfway through your games anyway.
Right. So we talked about, the ability to tent up the inside. We also talked about the tilt, either a negative tilt or extending the backside a little more. Any other factors and ways that you can adjust this keyboard?
Yeah, so if for whatever reason you notice that the keyboard actually is too low, maybe you got a big, thick wrist rest. There's also these huge legs that you can use to do two things. The main primary use is to actually just raise it higher and lower, so you can actually use all those. You could also use the bigger legs to also do the tenting, but I found that and it's also said on the website that the amount of angle that you get when you use the big legs is probably too much. But it's there, so you can experiment with it. Uh, so that's the last thing to talk about for the legs. Then the big thing, well, we mentioned it earlier, but that keyboard spacebar, with the triple hyperspace bar, that's actually been quite handy for having that extra flexibility to use your thumb to hit some buttons and even reduce the load on the thumb. Uh, like any type of adjustment, there will be a bit of an adjustment time with your thumb being used to reaching a bit further and your index finger. If you've been playing a particular game for a while and you've been using the index finger to hit like 10 keys, then you needs to have an adjustment period where it only goes back to hitting 6 keys or whatever, and your
Right.
thumb takes over instead.
Definitely, definitely. So I think that it covers a lot in terms of adjustability. And so with all of that in mind, right, the increased space, the ability to angle the keyboard really among many planes of movement. And then, of course, the triple thumbs, the triple space bar. What would you rate the TKO? How many wrists would the TKO get?
Yeah, so 9.5 wrists out of 10 if you can get half wrists.
Half a
But
wrist.
that's the point, yeah. But yeah, 9.5. As you can see, as the key thing about ergonomic keyboards is not a one size fits all solution, it's the customizability. So you can see that with the legs of different sizes and how it's positioned, you can experiment with different positions, and well, that's what you can figure out with yourself. But of course, if you have a bit of trouble with your hands or your arms, you can get a professional to help you decide what to do as well with it. And the good thing about having legs is that it is a set height. So if you use an object, you got the cumbersome part of bringing it around with you if you bring your keyboard around. But at the same time, it might be slightly at the wrong height. One object might be 1 centimeter tall. The next thing you put underneath your keyboard will be 1.2 centimeters tall. And that would affect your performance because you're not quite used to that exact angle. So in that case, it's been very helpful for that. It also saves you the fact that you don't have to buy multiple keyboards. If you notice that it's been nice to have a keyboard at a certain angle for some activities and not for the other ones. So, you're not forced to use the keyboard as it is because it can be adjusted. And even with the space bar. So if you don't like the triple space bar, I quite like it. But if you don't like it, you can actually just take it out, and it comes with a full normal size
Oh,
space
that's
bar if
cool.
you want the normal part as well. Yeah, and I've actually switched it around just to see how easy it was. And there's YouTube videos on the Kinesis website to really run through exactly how to do it if you don't know how to do it. And someone as stupid as me could work it out watching that video. So it's really easy. The only reason why I gave that 9.5 instead of the 10 out of 10 is there are some things that you can't get with a one-piece keyboard. So if you see other products from Kinesis Gaming or even just other brands, you can see what we call split keyboards, where you can get that angle not just for the left hand but even the right hand, because you can do that when it's two separate pieces. But if you have a one-piece keyboard, and remember this is for portability here, that's why it's a one-piece keyboard, that's just one thing you can't really do.
All right, we have talked about quite a few things. We've rated the keyboard. We've given it a lot of risks. But now we have to talk about money, right? We've talked about risks. Let's talk about affordability. How does it compare with some of the other popular keyboards on the market?
Yep. So at $159.95, it is a mid-tier price 60% keyboard. So on average, it's costing you about $50 to $70 more than the HyperX, the Razer, or the Corsair equivalents. However, as you can see, you do get some unique features with the Kinesis Gaming TKO keyboard. That includes the 4 ergonomic feet we discussed about tenting and tilting. You get that 3-button spacebar, which is unique to all mechanical and normal keyboards around. You got your high onboard profiles and binding customizability, which I think should be standard for any gaming keyboard. And what you don't get in most keyboards, but you get the TKO, you get a hard case that's specifically designed for it. So you know that you just got the right case. You don't have to do extra effort and shopping and getting the wrong cases to not suit your keyboard. So the other thing to talk about is, as a 60% keyboard, it is cheaper than the 10 keyless version and the full mechanical counterparts, obviously, because it's smaller. So it's a very great entry model if you're going for mechanical keyboards, especially you're someone like me who has just done the switch from non-mechanical to mechanical. And as you say, once you switch to mechanical, you can't switch back. I feel it now.
Just like Pringles. So based on all of this, our affordability discussion, our ergonomic adjustability discussion, the build quality, comfort of use, who would you recommend this keyboard for?
Yeah, so the most obvious group, as we've been saying, that would like this keyboard are people who will be bringing their keyboard to play in tournaments. The other group of people that I think that would like to take advantage of this keyboard is those who would like the extra binds, for particularly that spacebar. And the last thing, and this is more general, but anyone who just wants the game and doesn't have that luxurious huge table and just wants a bit more desk space, especially for their mouse use and their aim, then this 60% keyboard is definitely a good option.
I think you hit it right on the head. It's for gamers that want to bring it for tournaments. It's for people that might want to have an extra bind that they can control with their thumb using that triple spacebar. And then, of course, for those that are already looking for more space on their desk, this might be the keyboard for you. All right, guys, that is all. Thank you so much for watching. If you guys want to learn a little more about keyboard ergonomics, please check out Gaming Ergonomics 101. That is our series about all things ergonomics and the updated evidence as to what's optimal for your setup. We also go over staggered versus ortholinear keyboard position and what that means for the physical stress of your hands. And if you want to learn a little more about the keyboard itself, we have our unboxing video with Dr. Kevin Ho going over all of the details of the product in the unboxing. But this was a complete review about the ergonomics, the adjustability, the affordability, the build experience, and the aesthetics. Hope you guys learned a lot, and we'll see you guys soon. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you need individualized coaching for your injuries, sleep, exercise, or nutrition, you can check out our Patreon. And of course, you can catch us live on YouTube or Twitch. Play more, hurt less.